So Kanye said something that got me thinking. And before you freak out, no, I am not talking about his anti-Semitic statements. That's another video for another day. But he said something in a Tucker Carlson interview. And I know, it's Tucker Carlson. But he said something in a Tucker Carlson interview a couple of weeks ago about Uvalde. And if you've been watching videos on my channel for some time now, you know that I talk a lot about Uvalde. It hits me really hard, and it's just something that has just stuck with me. And I'm going to continue to talk about Uvalde. But when it comes to what Kanye said in this particular interview, it really got me thinking, because there's like a very, very tiny shred of truth. So let me parse this out. And let me tell you about what this interview was. So Kanye was being interviewed with Tucker Carlson, and he was talking about Uvalde. And this is what he said to Tucker. He said that he felt like a group had knowledge of the shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers. I felt like the people at the Gap knew about the school shooting that Matthew McConaughey was talking about before it even happened. And then he goes on to say, it was so in sync, the information. And I heard about it on the radio driving, and I was like, am I in the Truman Show right now? And then he continues to say, I'm not saying that they did, but it felt so in sync. The idea of this media rush over the 78 specific outlets that influence, and then he didn't finish that thought. And then Carlson asked him what he meant by that, and that if there was a coordinated message, to which Kanye, or Ye, responded with the affirmative. So I'm not saying, and I don't believe, that the actual Uvalde shooting was a conspiracy. But I think that what Kanye said kind of hits on something that is just kind of in the discourse a lot lately. And that's about conspiracy theories, which is linked to, misinformation, false information, and kind of this whole censorship thing that we have going on. And what it made me start thinking about is a lot of the things over history that at the time that someone was talking about them, they were looked at as a conspiracy theory. But then over time, they were actually found out to be true. Now, again, this isn't to say that every conspiracy theory out there is true or valid. There's a lot of them that are absolutely ridiculous. But there have been some conspiracy theories that have turned out to be true. Like the fact that we were lied into the Iraq War and Afghanistan about WMDs that didn't exist. I mean, we were fully and completely lied to by corrupt politicians that were just doing all of that messaging because they wanted to go into that region. And then think about like Enron and the crash of 2008. There was so much gaslighting at the beginning. Something we're actually seeing right now, that we weren't in a recession, that everything's fine, but then everything broke down. People across the country lost their homes because of all of these crappy mortgages that were going on and the way that the banks were working. There was just so much corruption going on. And that was true. MK Ultra, false flag operations that our US military has done, and also other foreign nations. I mean, the idea of a conspiracy theory is really, we don't have enough information to validate that this is true, or it's considered a conspiracy theory because there aren't enough people at the top that do actually know that it's real, that are willing to go onto that front line and say, yes, this is actually real and true, and here's what happened. Even things like Epstein, that was semi-considered a conspiracy theory in the 90s when some people were kind of seeing what he was doing. And unfortunately, so many people just covered their eyes to what he was doing. A convenient out, if you ask me. There's a lot of varieties when it comes to conspiracy theories. But what Kanye said here just got me thinking about the fact that the reason why conspiracy theories even start in the first place is because we know we've been lied to in the past, and there's also just so much lying that's happening right now. And in particular with the case of Uvalde, like I said, I don't think that the actual shooting of Uvalde was a conspiracy, but I do think that because we have been lied to so many times when it comes to Uvalde. They said that Arredondo was negotiating with the shooter, and that was a lie. That they were able to get into the building, and that was a lie. And just so many other things I can't even count. If you want to check out that playlist, check here at the end, because that was what was happening as those new details were coming out. And they were acting like they were doing some wonderful job, that they had gotten the shooter, when in actuality, they hadn't. And 19 children and 2 teachers died. This is why conspiracy theories grow. Because you either see the blatant lie and have lived that experience of, I know this person is lying to every single person that is watching them, and maybe they are, or only a few other people, are the ones that actually know the truth. And what we see is that people do not like inconvenient truths. Right now, we're dealing with the fact that the Biden administration doesn't want to acknowledge that we are going through, right now, at this very moment, a recession, because they're conveniently changing the definition of a recession. Now, a lot of experts aren't going with it, but the ones that are, it kind of shows you those that are willing to get that money because they know that it benefits them to be lying. And those are the kinds of things that cause conspiracy theories to rise and run amok. I think that there's quite a few conspiracy theories that are actually true, and a lot of conspiracy theories that are conspiracy theories that don't happen, are major embellishments of truth, and also just flat out ridiculous. Everyone has their own take, so I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this. I know that Kanye, or Ye, is a very controversial figure right now, and like I said, I'm not going to talk about any of the other things that he's been saying recently. I don't feel like YouTube is a safe space to even have a full-on discourse of what it means to look at something and know that it's a lie, and know that there's people trying to push a lie to make it fact. These are conversations, unfortunately, that are getting censored and removed, and people also just want to quickly cancel when you're not saying the convenient thing that they want to hear. And that's the other thing too. People just aren't willing to get uncomfortable. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance happening, and I think the pandemic woke a lot of people up because we saw that our country, our politicians, and our government is, one, not built to function to help us and aid us when we need it, and also that our politicians want to keep that structure in place because they benefit from that system. I mean, look at the feckless squad that we're dealing with. They're going to send a letter, but then they don't. They're continuing to help fund the Ukraine war. They have pretty much walked back from everything that they got us to believe in them for. That we were so excited to have them in politics because we truly thought that they were going to affect some real change. And what we're seeing, though, is that diversity doesn't mean what you think it is, because someone can be a diversity pick and still be touting the establishment line. When you're really wanting to cause a ruckus, you're not going to make it into Congress, the House of Representatives, or the Senate. So yeah, I think that when we get lied to so often, and especially now, this is the breeding ground of conspiracy theories. And there's going to continue to be people that say things like the recession and the lab leak and just all about COVID especially is a conspiracy theory. When it comes to the jab, that's another thing that I think in about 10 to 12 years is going to be looked at as one of the biggest and most corrupt lies that our entire planet has been lied to about. But that's just my take. I completely understand why people got the jab. I wish that people wouldn't continue to do so because there's so little science to support what they're trying to get people to believe. But ultimately, it is everyone's choice, and I'm not going to say what someone should do. As someone who believed the virus and masks still to this day, I get that COVID is real. I get that COVID is a big thing for people, and I get that people just want to get back to their lives. But it's one of those things where, because people have not wanted to be inconvenienced from the get-go, that's why we're still where we're at today. Because we weren't able to make those really serious, unselfish decisions to say, nope, we are going to fully lock down and pay people to stay home and make sure that people have the money and support that they need to get through the pandemic. I mean, that was by far one of the biggest travesties, I think, of the pandemic, because we could have seen things like Medicare for all get passed. We could have just seen that impetus to want to make change in a dramatic way for the people. And I'm not talking socialism, and I'm certainly not talking communism. It's not an ism of any way, but I just don't get why wanting to make sure that people are fed, have a roof over their head, and have mental health services and healthcare. I don't understand why that is such a radical thing. Why? Someone please tell me. Why does that bother people so much? Does it bother you? What is it? Does it feel like a government handout? I don't know. The yay thing just got me thinking, and especially with something like Uvalde, the lies have been so exposed and continue to be so, and I'm sure that we're continuing to be lied to when it comes to Uvalde, because there's just so many people involved, and I think a lot of people want to protect themselves and each other because it's a good old boys crew, and that's what they do. They protect each other. They protect themselves. I mean, like I've reported here, they were getting their own children out rather than taking out the shooter. And there were just so many officers there. It just feels ridiculous. And that's why it's, I don't necessarily think that it's a conspiracy theory, but also looking at something like Gap, it's really hard to see something as devastating as Uvalde be used to sell merch, where they'll put a slogan on it to make you think like you're being supportive or woke. But it's all about capitalism. And I think that that's maybe kind of what Kanye was trying to get at, but probably not. I don't know. For me, when I see events like Uvalde or the war in Ukraine, and even slogans like Black Lives Matter getting slapped onto water bottles and t-shirts and hats and, all of those kinds of things, it makes you wonder, one, how much, if any, of those proceeds are actually going to help the people that are involved in that really serious, traumatic situation. But also, two, it exposes just how insidious capitalism is and where we're at in this country right now. Because when you can sell a t-shirt about Uvalde that took the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers, it just feels wrong. It doesn't feel like you're being supportive. It just feels like you're trying to signal to the outside world something that you may or may not actually believe in. And that's where I do get concerned with this woke culture and slogans and trying to put labels on everyone and everything. It's detracting from the very real and I think just serious discussion we need to be having of, is this person a good person or not? Do they have empathy? Are they sensitive to other people's concerns? Are they listening to other people? Because I don't know about you, sometimes I just feel like people are wanting to read into things that aren't even said. They take things out of context and they don't listen. Or if they do listen and it's some inconvenient truth that they don't want to hear, they run away. They kind of snowflake. And that's everyone. That's not just Democrats and liberals. It's also Republicans and right-wingers. And even people in the center. When you get to a place where you don't want to talk to someone anymore because of something that they believe, we're doing ourselves a disservice because we're not going to get anywhere if we're not willing to have that conversation. And like I've said in other videos, I get not wanting to talk to a racist or a white supremacist or a Nazi doing a Nazi salute. Of course, do not talk to those people. I just wish that there wasn't so much quickness to get agitated, call someone names, and denigrate someone that is truly just of their own good faith, believing what they believe. And they may not have ill intentions to you, to your friends, your family, or anyone else, but it's just something that they believe. I truly think the way that we make change is through listening to each other, as difficult and hard as that can be. It's not easy, but the good things in life usually aren't easy, and change isn't something that's going to happen easily. Another thing when it comes to Uvalde is also just how quickly the politicians decided to act and get gun legislation through. It's one of those things where when you see that quickness to action after a devastating event, it makes you feel like, one, it's not really their intention to do anything until something bad and shit hits the fan happens, but it's also about, are they ever going to do anything in a proactive manner? Because it's not like gun legislation and gun reform hasn't been a Democratic Party's talking point for decades now. We know that guns can kill people. We know that people that are ill mentally should not have guns because it puts people at a danger. We know that domestic abuse victims are some of the most prone to being killed from gun violence. There was also a recent report, I'll link it down in the description box below, about police officers and how many officers are domestic abusers. And that's something when it comes to the police aspect. We need to change the way that our police are structured, how they are hired, who they decide to bring in, and whether or not they actually give a crap about helping their community. Because as we're continuing to see so often, the devastating killings, harassing, sexual assaults that happen to people that are in the back of the cars of police officers, there's just so much that happens. It's a really insidious group culture that they just continue to foster, that bullying and antagonizing of people. It's just really sad. And sadly, capitalism is meant to prey on your pain and suffering, and everything is run like a business, even those things that shouldn't be run like a business, like our healthcare. It should be about health care, not profit for our shareholders. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on this, if you agree with any of this, if you think I'm crazy, if you think that there's any conspiracy theories out there that you believe are more true or more false than others. It'd be interesting to see what y'all think. So thank you for watching. Stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other.